If you've ever looked at your own life or what seems to be the norm for society and thought, there has to be more, or this can't be it, congratulations, you've got a growth mindset. That mindset is probably why you clicked on this video. Sometimes it can feel like a curse, because if you always feel like you need to keep growing, when will you actually arrive? But if you really think about it, you're probably at your happiest when you are consistently growing, when there's a reasonable challenge in your life or a goal worth pursuing. That's when you really feel at your happiest. Tony Robbins actually says that progress is the formula for happiness. If that's the case, then the question is, what is the formula for progress? Now, I can't say I have the whole answer, but these 7 principles have played a major role as a catalyst for growth and progress in my own life. And who knows, maybe they can do the same for you. I've divided these principles into 4 categories. Firstly, heart. This is with regard to passion and purpose and motivation. It's really to help you clarify your why and set a clear direction for your life. Number 2 is head, and this is about planning. It's like, what's the path you take to the life that you want? Number 3 is hands, and this is really the practical part. It's about practice. It's what actions can you take to stimulate growth or progress in your life. Number 4 is hindrance, and this is really about what if it's not working? What if I've got this goal, but there's something in the way? How do I prioritize the right actions to make sure I keep making progress? So let's dive in with principle number 1. As a teenager, I read a book called Wild at Heart. Now, outside of the Bible, there is no other book that plays a bigger role in my life as this book. Most books I only read once. This one I've read 3 or 4 times. It's incredibly good. Now, there's actually a field guide that goes along with it, and there's also one written for women, because Wild at Heart is specifically written for men, and I've put links to those in the description. But when I read this the first time, there is a quote that stuck with me. I read it and it really just changed how I looked at everything. And the quote goes, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So principle number 1 is this: do what makes you come alive. Both my brothers are engineers. I studied psychology. I could have studied engineering. I did all the aptitude tests and I was fully qualified for it, but I knew it would not lead me to something that would be fulfilling. Today I have a job that I don't need a vacation from. I take 7 to 10 days off a year. Usually it's for a family gathering or something of those sorts. And this year it was to go on my honeymoon. I don't have any other prospects to take time off for the rest of the year. And following principle number 1 is what made it possible for me. Whenever an opportunity came up, I would ask myself, would this make me come alive? And if the answer was no, or I couldn't see how it would lead to something that would make me come alive, it was just a hard pass. I came up with principle number 2 when I was trying to really define for myself what I wanted out of life. Because most people have no idea what they want. They know what they don't want, but if you ask them to define what they want in life, it's kind of tricky for them to really answer. So I came up with a principle to direct my thinking, planning and decision making, to guide me towards what I really wanted out of life. So this is principle number 2. Design your life so you never have to do anything that you don't want to. An important distinction to make here is that it does not say so you never have to do anything you don't like doing. Because let's face it, in pursuing our goals, we will always have to do something but we don't necessarily enjoy doing. If you're trying to take control of your health, you would need to exercise, you would need to say no to desserts at times. Maybe fixing your finances requires budgeting and planning and cutting back on some expenses. Having healthy relationships requires you to work on yourself, to get to know your triggers, to extend forgiveness to others, and to be willing to ask for the same. Some of those are not fun, but if we are clear on what we want in life, we can count the cost and do things we know we need to in order to get what we really want to. So what if there's something in your life you really don't want to do? Well, I ran a food prepping company for a while, and I shut it down the moment I was driving home from the gym and thought, now I have to go make some meals for a client. And I just decided it's simply not what I want. I started the business when I didn't have a job. Now I had one, and the business never really provided the funds I needed to cover my costs. So what I did is I reached to the client and said, hey, I'll do this order for you, but I'm shutting down the company afterwards. He ended up cancelling, and I basically saved myself 3 hours of misery with that message and probably hundreds of hours moving forward. So will you be able to design your life so you never have to do anything you don't want to overnight? Probably not. That's why it's called design. It's something you do over time, and it often requires reiteration. You try something, and if it gets you what you want, fantastic. If it doesn't, you change, you make adjustments, and that's why it's design your life. What you want today might not be what you want in a couple of years from now, but if you apply the principle consistently, eventually you'll reach a point where you get to do the things you want to do, because all of it gets you what you really desire in life. So applying principles 1 and 2, you'll be leaning towards what makes you come alive and designing your life in that direction. But what does that look like practically? Because wishful thinking isn't going to get us very far. Achieving any goal or objective or dream requires effort. Effort is managing of your resources like money, time, energy. There's an overwhelming amount of resources and content on how to manage your money. I mean, just look it up, it's there, because, it makes money. But there's one principle that really served me well, and here's how I developed it. I just moved to China as an English teacher. I finished studying, I had a bunch of debt, China pays well, so I was like, this makes sense. When I arrived, I worked for a couple of days, probably about a week or so before it was payday. So as a result, they were only going to pay me a portion of my salary, which was perfectly fine. But knowing this, I had to manage my money well. But I ended up going to a gym close to my apartment, and they offered me a really amazing gym. The only catch was I had to pay it that same day. So I was like, you know what, I've got the cash now, I know my salary is coming in a couple of days, this should be fine, so I paid it. What I didn't know is because my banking details weren't fully sorted yet, they were going to deliver the money to me cash. And because Chengdu, the city I was living in, is such a big place, they weren't going to be doing it in person. They're just sending it with like a random courier. And they were like, the money could get lost, but it should be fine. We've packaged it well. And that was the moment I realized if anything happens in between, I just put myself in jeopardy and in a really bad position, because I may have needed the money that I just spent on the gym membership. So that's when I came up with the principle: never spend money you don't have. And I've been applying that consistently, and has helped me to really protect myself against worry and anxiety, and it's kept me from quite a few pitfalls. Thankfully, it all worked out. The money arrived safely, and I could pay all my bills. But that was the day I decided I'll never spend money that I don't have. Now, I do have a credit card, and I swipe it for practically all of my day-to-day expenses. But I never do it unless I know I've got access to the money I'm spending within 24 hours. So it has to be somewhere in a different bank account, or somewhere that I can quickly get it into my credit card if needed. So what about good debt, like buying a property? Well, using my credit card allows me to build good credit. It also allows me to earn some extra interest on my money while it's sitting in my savings account, and while I'm using the bank's money to pay for my expenses. But because I've got good credit, I can actually get a good loan. I just make sure that the money I have can cover the monthly payments. So even though I don't have hundreds of thousands lying around to completely pay off the actual debt, I do have the money that is going to cover all of my expenses, even if that means I need to tighten up some months. So if you want to see some real growth in your finances, make sure you never spend money that you don't have. Principle number 4 is a productivity hack, which is really about time management. Now, it's pretty simple, you probably heard it before, but if you apply it well, it really makes a difference. So principle number 4 is the 2-minute rule, and it says, if it'll take you 2 minutes or less, do it immediately. Now, I don't apply this religiously, like it's not the rule I apply to every decision I make. I created a version for myself that I can use for the days when I'm feeling unproductive. You know, those days where it's just like, you just don't know what to do, you're feeling lost, you don't know what's the next action you need to take. Then this applies really well. What I do is I make a list of a bunch of things that I need to get done. I put it in a to-do list form. But the hack is I put a bunch of super simple tasks in there. I would put stuff like brushing my teeth, making my bed, washing the dishes, putting some clothing in the wash. Any simple task that I've maybe been putting off but won't take very long, I put it on there. Reason being, If I can stack a bunch of good wins, if you got like 4 or 5 good wins, you're building momentum for taking on the sort of tougher challenges of the day. Days when we feel unproductive is usually because we don't have a clear goal to work on, or we're just unclear on the steps we need to take in order to reach our goal. So making a list of a couple things that need to get done, it puts you in a state where you're constantly taking action, and that drives your progress and your personal growth. Principle number 5, like principle number 4, comes from Atomic Habits. So if you're one of the few people who hasn't read the book before, there's a link in the description, but most people have probably seen this. So although this is a habit hack, what it really is about managing energy, because that's what habits are really about. The habit system in the brain is very much like autopilot for an airplane. You know, you design the system, set the destination, and the autopilot basically does the rest. The pilot simply has to make sure it stays on track. And that's what habits do in our lives. If you design the right habits, they direct you in the right direction, and you simply have to check in and make sure you keep doing them. So research has shown that up to 70% of our actions are actually habit-based. Brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, the route you take to work or to the gym or wherever you want to go. It's all based on habit. It's your brain finding the simplest way to get you there so that it can spend more energy on different things. So principle number 5 is very useful for you when you need to build a new habit that will make your life easier. In other words, managing your energy for optimal results. The principle is never miss twice. See, habits are formed through repetition, which carves new pathways in your brain. But that makes it a little tricky because we tend to forget. And the principle we then to apply is when you're trying to build a new habit, never miss twice. So if you slept in this morning because you missed your workout, just make sure you don't miss it tomorrow. If you didn't do your 5-minute daily clean to keep your apartment in a good space, make sure you don't miss it tomorrow. Or maybe you didn't do your meditation yesterday, make sure you do it today. See, building a new habit very rarely goes according to plan because life happens. But if you never miss twice, you're significantly more likely to dial in that habit, which will fast forward your progress in that area of your life, but also free up energy for other important tasks. Number 6 is actually quite obvious, but it's not super easy to apply. I only recently coined it for myself in this way, and I'm still trying to apply it well. Principle number 6 is really about being proactive. It is do it by choice, not necessity. Start going to the gym before you have a health scare. Change jobs before you absolutely have to. End the relationship before it gets really complicated. See, it's not easy because we prefer comfort. I'm still young, my body is fine. This isn't the best job, but it's okay, it pays my bills, Or I know he or she is not the one, but I really don't want to be lonely. Choosing to take action before it's necessary saves us a lot of pain. Alex Hormozi actually talks about pulling the pain from the future into the present so that you can have a better future. Do it by choice and not necessity, and you'll start reaping future rewards in the present, and in so doing, fast track your personal growth. Have you ever found yourself knowing what you want and knowing how to get it, but you just can't get yourself to do it? Well, principle number 7 will give you the answer. It's not really something you can apply, but it is something that clarifies why you're struggling with it. Your habits will always lean in the direction of your deepest desire. So let's say you have a goal of getting up earlier in the morning so that you can go to the gym, but you just can't get yourself out of bed. The problem is probably not motivation or discipline. It's whatever is keeping you up later at night. Maybe it's a YouTube live, maybe you're working on a side hustle, maybe a late night episode of your favorite series is the little bit of joy that helps you sort of get through the day. It's the one thing you look forward to. It simply means your deepest desire, and therefore your highest priority, is whatever is keeping you up later at night. So you have a choice to make. Either you can choose the gym as your higher priority and get to bed earlier, or find a different way to figure out. Maybe you go to bed early and you go to the gym and you jump on the treadmill and watch the series or whatever you want to watch while you're in the gym. It's really about thinking, how can I streamline this process so that I'm still fulfilling both desires or maybe the one is just competing and you have to remove it from your life. I had the same problem for years when it came to prayer and spending time with God. I always told myself, you know what, life happens, sometimes things get in the way. And I realized that I simply hadn't made it a high enough priority. And when I realized that, I was like, well, I gotta make a choice here. And pretty much from then on, I get up practically every morning at 5 a.m. Not because it's a religious action, but because my relationship with God really means a lot to me. Sometimes my alarm goes off and I really don't want to get out of bed. And then I ask myself, so what's more important to you? Do you want to get some more sleep or spend time with God, connect with Him, learn from Him, and have Him direct your life so you can live one that's in line with His purposes and therefore also fulfills the desires inside your heart. So whenever you're having a hard time getting to something that you really want to do or know that you have to, realize that there's a competing desire. And if you can identify that and figure out how you can either make them work together or cancel out whichever one doesn't serve you, that's how you're going to make your real progress. So those are the 7 principles that have been some of the biggest catalysts for growth in my life. I've listed them in the description if you want to review them and think through them. Maybe you want to add them to your list. So if you have your own list of principles that have served you well, I would love to read them in the comments. Or if you're planning on applying one of them, I'd really like to hear which ones.